Okay, so Peterloo, which is a new film by Mike Leigh, based on the real-life event of the Peterloo Massacre, which Mike Leigh's been saying when he was at school he was never taught about, and there's been a lot of conversation about whether or not people knew about this.
I remember doing it.
No, I mean, I was asking you about it because you did politics at...
Yeah, but I did it at certainly at A-level, because there was a lot of British sort of social history of the 19th century.
Sure.
So certainly the Peterloo Massacre was in there.
Okay, so some did, some didn't. I was aware of it beforehand. August 16th, 1819. It was a pro-democracy rally in the square in St Petersfield in Manchester, which was charged by the Manchester and Salford Yeomanry, and in the ensuing chaos, people were killed, people were injured, and it's gone down as an infamously horrendous event. And the attendees at the rally, which was peaceful, included women and children. So Mike Leigh basically takes us on the lead up to and the event of the Peterloo Massacre. We begin on a battlefield. We have a traumatised British soldier who returns home. He's called Joseph. He returns home to his homeland, which is, blighted by poverty and famine and unemployment. And there is a real desire for change, for parliamentary representation, for suffrage, for better conditions. And local activists are talking about going from the north down to London to get this London-based orator, Henry Hunt, played by Rory Kinnear, rather terrifically played by him, to bring him up to speak. Meanwhile, Joseph's mother, Nellie, who's played by Maxine Peake, who is, I think, has simply never put a foot wrong on screen, is struggling to hold her family together through, increasingly hard times. But they're all united by this desire for a better future. At the same time, an unholy coalition of landowners, clergy, and the wealthy get wind of the fact that this big meeting is going to happen in which people are going to discuss the possibility of change. And they want, by any means necessary, to quell it.
The rabble must be awed into submission. A mere show of military might would soon see them gambling like little lambs back to their looms.
They are ignorant souls. They know not what they want.
They are children.
Innocent babes.
Babes perhaps innocent never.
The rod is all they understand.
My son, fear thou the Lord and the King, and meddle not with them that are given to change.
Gentlemen, might I urge a little forbearance? The labouring classes are ruled by their stomachs. Were we to prevail upon the mill owners to furnish them with an additional shilling per week, their hunger would be alleviated, and this agitation would cease.
A shilling this week, 2 shillings next week, a guinea for Christmas.
This concerns not money. This concerns not an extension of the franchise. This concerns neither liberty nor freedom. The remedy, gentlemen, is the iron hand of the law.
Now, there are a huge number of characters, a huge number of speaking parts. And one of the things that Mike Leigh is very keen to do is to get everybody to have, to have had their say. So you hear this huge plethora of voices. And at times, if you remember Land and Freedom, the Ken Loach movie, there's a moment in that in which essentially the action stops and they have a long discussion about the politics of how things are going to go. And I think the most remarkable thing about that section in Land and Freedom is that although it is literally people having like a political meeting in a room, it manages to be dramatic. And what Mike Leigh is trying to do here is to juggle an enormous number of different points, different perspectives, different, points of view, and get you to know all these separate characters and understand the kind of the issues behind it as we move towards what we know is coming. And I confess that there were moments during that section that I thought, okay, fine, I feel that this needs to move forward slightly faster. Feel that this needs to pick up the pace somewhat. However, when you get to the final act, which is the Peterloo Massacre itself, you realise that everything that's happened up until that point has basically been giving you the investment and the background that you need for the sense of what's about to unfold to work properly, so that when you actually get to the final act, which is overwhelming, quite overwhelming, I think that although whilst I was watching the first half of the movie, I was thinking, okay, we're having one discussion too many, we're hearing one voice too many, we're having one, knotty, thorny debate too many. I do think that by the time you get to the end, the cumulative power of it is that when you finally get to this horrendous event, all of that has invested you in it so much that it's like the film is putting you there, on the spot, understanding the issues. There are definitely overtones of Paul Greengrass later on. It's funny, when people think about Mike Leigh, they often think about, smaller dramas centering on individual characters. But I mean, if you look at things like Topsy Turvy, which has this extraordinary theatrical scope, I remember when somebody said
the Gilbert and Sullivan one.
Yes, I remember when somebody first said that Mike Leigh was doing Topsy Turvy, and I said, What's it about? They said, it's about Gilbert and Sullivan. And I thought they said, honestly, it's about Gilbert O'Sullivan. And that made more sense to me. Oh, yeah, fine, that's interesting. Mike Leigh's making a quirky drama about Gilbert O'Sullivan. Then you look at Mr. Turner, in which there's this extraordinarily painterly eye being brought to the character of this artist. And of course, Tim Spall saying it's the most difficult role he ever had to research because Turner knew so much about the science of light, about the science of paint. He had to research all that stuff. Well, all those things come to play in Peterloo, in which he's got the broadest of canvases, this enormous cast, very, very sort of, intricate social history interplay, all leading towards this tragic event. And by the end of it, it's quite overwhelming. So whatever my reservations in the lead up were, by the time we came to the final act, I thought, okay, fine, absolutely, you earned it. You earned it, because that last act is so overwhelming. And my suspicion is that if you did anything to what led up to that act, it wouldn't have quite that power, and it needs to have that kind of power.